of worship despite the effect of modernization. I believe this is one of the rare cases in which a group has managed to preserve its original culture in its original site. Not only that, they have managed to expand their culture to reach out further into the society of ours, which has gone through much changes due to modernization over the years. The Old Tao Nan School was designed in an eclectic classical style. The once Hokkien Hui Kwan School had fluted columns, and the symmetry of the building are characteristic of classical architecture, while balconies fronting the facade suggest a colonial or tropical style. The layout of the building is also based on straight settlement bungalows with rooms arranged around a common central hall outside the principal building. As we can see here today, much of the original classical architecture of this building has been preserved. Funny to think how what once used to be a school, the Chinese school that was highly influenced by Chinese reforms in the 1990s, has now today become the Peranakan Museum. Lessons taught in Hokkien and Mandarin here once can no longer be found in any existing schools in Singapore. This unique culture of the Chinese educated have been replaced with English being the main mode of communication amongst us Singaporeans in these modern times. It is quite obvious here that such a culture has not only been reduced but lost entirely in the wake of modernization. The promoting of the English language by our political leaders in the early years of the development of Singapore with the main purpose of economic function due to westernized industrialization. It was necessary that this culture of having classes taught in ethnic languages was to be done away with and replaced with English. Having a common language for economic benefits wasn't the only motivation that our leaders probably had for us. A common language also served creating a stronger common national identity for young Singapore, which had just separated from Malaysia and had to strive to survive in the rapidly developing world. Like how Minister Rajaratnam had once put it, that he is willing to dispense with cultural organicism and use the various tools of modern state, such as creation of national education system, to constitute a hybridized Anglo-Asian identity. However, having taken on a new role in preserving the Peranakan culture, it shows that the state does not forgo all culture through modernization, but selectively pick what they choose to retain or promote.
Therefore, through the examples of the 6 heritage sites in the Civic District Trail, we can see how cultures have been hybridized to take on new forms. This is a case where cultural practices of the different communities in Singapore, passed on from their previous generations originating from other parts of Asia, are reduced and changed to incorporate the process of modernization after Singapore gained independence. This modernization process is largely associated with the West. Thus, the hybridized product of the cultural practices we see today has an economic aspect to it due to the Anglo-Asian form which is unique to Singapore.
In the process of modernization in Singapore, rich cultural practices have been reduced to its economic value and function so as to serve the state's call for the global city. The conservation efforts of the Civic District Trail have also been criticized for becoming a museumization venture. This is the creation of an idealized past which is romanticized and easy to consume. Therefore, as contrived landscapes, rather than representing realistic portrayals of the actual landscape, museumization creates an ambience suitable for tourist consumption, which is essentially the economic value and function of the Civic District Trail. For instance, the Raffles Hotel, after the renovations were complete, few Singaporeans could identify with it and see it as an elitist landscape. The hotel is also the crown jewel of the tourist industry for its rich heritage dating to its colonial past. The museumization of Raffles Hotel engenders differentiation. These are high places, the majestic and monumental, which are removed from the vernacular landscapes that ordinary Singaporeans identify with. The more detached the people feel of the conservation efforts in the Civic District Trail, the more concern there is that the location is not fostering a sense of place and identity. In this case, rich cultural practices are not limited to the primary purpose and function of the place. Although there is a change in the function of the place to one that is more economically driven, one can consider how rich cultural practices of a place is also attributed to the place by what the community makes it out to be. The sense of detachment that Singaporeans are facing in this museumization process is also an indication of how rich cultural practices that have been recognized along with the place have evolved to serve the government's drive for modernization, and the preservation of the culture is selective and does not do justice to its original culture. Therefore, modernization has indeed reduced rich cultural practices to its economic value and function. Another point of contention is that the monuments in the Civic District Trail are signposts that we want to keep because they are remnants of a shared history which is embraced by all Singaporeans, regardless of their ethnic origins. Examples of these would be sites like the St. Andrew Cathedral. However, the issue remains whether heritage conservation has rendered historic and cultural districts meaningful, because there is always the importance of commercial viability being a priority of concern over the preservation for the sake of history and belonging in the conservation process. We would also like to argue that rich cultural practices have drastically been reduced beyond the point of recognition for nation-building processes. After Singapore gained its independence from Malaysia, there was no one identity that Singapore could actually fall on to form the nation. It was in essence a state without an identity, since there was no one racial identity and thus no single nation upon to which we could erect a national identity on. Lee and his colleagues aimed to make industrial and capitalist modernity the meta-narrative which could frame Singapore's national identity, and to create a global city which, because of its trading links, would escape the restraints placed upon it by its history and geography. This global city is a new form of human organization and settlement that has no precedent in mankind's past history. The hybridization process of culture has already begun after Singapore gained independence. This is where the primordial identity of the people are combined with the state's industrial and capitalist modernity which frames Singapore's identity. The primordial culture and identity that had no place in the state's effort to develop and modernize the nation state had to be done away with. Therefore, in the post-independence period in the 1960s, modernization had already taken place and the Singapore landscape was dominated by demolished and rebuilt philosophy for economic development in creating a modern landscape. It is only in the 1980s and 90s where the government saw the need for nostalgia and hankering back the past. This is where the colonial past of the monuments are being reconstructed and in order to museumize the place. However, this move is basically rooted in the relentless drive towards economic development. Therefore, rich cultural practices have been removed and replaced by modernization, once again for economic purposes. In conclusion, the impetus behind creating these heritage landscapes through the Civic District Trail is prompted by pragmatic reasons. Therefore, it leaves rich cultural practices at the mercy of our constant drive for progress measured by economic value and function. The rich cultural practices are incorporated back for the state's drive for modernity instead, for incorporating rich cultural practices into modernity, which further dilutes and decreases the original rich cultural practices which they once were. Therefore, we can say that modernization in Singapore does reduce the rich cultural practices to their economic value and function. Okay, on today's episode. Shit, sorry. Hey, damn it. Oh, supposed to be you say, right?
Yeah, okay. We start.
Damn!
So how many times have you do this recording thing?